guys, it's the Coaster Battleman here, bringing you my take on Cedar Points Major Roller Coasters. This is my ranking of them from worst to best. Number 15 is Corkscrew, and this ride is just plain awful. It has a mediocre layout. I mean, 3 inversions, they're okay, but you have stupid elements like that airtime hill right after that first drop, and a really short ride time, along with a bunch of ways you can get headbanging or just some sort of pain. And yeah, the coaster is pretty mediocre. Besides those 2 corkscrews you get to walk over, honestly, this ride is more fun to watch than to ride. At number 14, Cedar Creek Mine Ride. This is an okay coaster. It is the second oldest coaster at Cedar Point, and it's an okay mine train. It has some helixes in there and a couple lift hills in there. It goes over the water. It's not a bad ride compared to Corkscrew, but it's not a great ride either. It's okay. Number 13 is Blue Streak, and this is the only wooden roller coaster at Cedar Point, and it's alright. It's an alright ride. It has a decent drop, some okay airtime hills, but kind of mediocre smoothness. It's not unbearably rough, it's just kind of rough. It's a decent ride, not really the best roller coaster out there, but it's not a bad coaster to ride once or twice when you're at Cedar Point. Number 12 is Iron Dragon, and this is a pretty cool aerodynamics suspended coaster, and it has a really cool helix section over the water, 2 lift hills, and a pretty long ride time, and a few decent moments where you're swinging back and forth. Overall, this is a really solid ride, and I really enjoy it. Number 11 is Valravn, and I know a lot of coaster enthusiasts really hate on this coaster. I don't really hate this ride. It's just not nearly as good as other B&M dive coasters and other coasters at Cedar Point. It has the solid drop, it has a good layout with the inversions, and that bunny hop before the brake run is pretty solid as well. But overall, this coaster doesn't deliver as good of air time on the drop as your traditional old school B&M dive coasters like Griffin and SheiKra, which are much better rides in my opinion. But this is a decent coaster. It looks really good and pretty picturesque, but it's not my favorite coaster. 10th place is Gemini, and this is an old school aerodynamics hybrid coaster. It has some solid airtime moments, some turns throughout the ride as well, and a pretty okay first drop. This is a really underrated coaster at Cedar Point, and it's a lot of fun when you're dueling the other side. But that hasn't really happened that often in the past few years when I've been to Cedar Point. Number 9 is Rougarou, and this is the B&M float coaster at the park. It used to be a stand-up coaster, but it was converted into floatless in 2015, and it's a lot better than it once was. This is a really solid coaster. It has plenty of good inversions, some pretty interesting turns throughout the ride as well. There might be some headbanging here and there, but it's not unbearable. Number 8 is Wicked Twister. This is a really fun, intimate impulse coaster. You have some pretty intense twists on both sides, and I recommend to go in the very front or the very back, one of those first 2 rows or last 2 rows, for the ultimate twisting experience. But if you're not really into that, then go into the middle. This is a very fun ride, and definitely worth checking out. Number 7 is Raptor, and this is an awesome B&M inverted coaster, arguably better than the other invert in Ohio, Banshee. That's a pretty tough debate because both of them are pretty different rides, but getting back to Raptor, this ride has a really solid first drop, plenty of intense inversions, and a really intense closing helix section as well. This is a really fun ride, and definitely a coaster at Cedar Point worth checking out. Number 6 is Gatekeeper. This is a B&M wing coaster. It has 6 inversions, including a very awesome keyhole section with 2 inversions in that and the wing over drop, along with a few others. This is a really fun wing coaster. Not quite my favorite wing coaster in the world. I would say Thunderbird is a bit better, but this is still a really excellent coaster. It's pretty smooth and it's a lot of fun. Very graceful as well. Fifth place is a coaster that is anything but graceful. It's top Thrill Dragster. This is a massive Intamin strata coaster, and it's just insane. 22 seconds of one of the greatest ride experiences ever. The only reason why I don't have this coaster higher is because it is so short, but when you're on this ride and you're flying at 120 miles an hour on that launch, it's just insane. It's breathtaking. You have a really good top hat that delivers some really strong airtime, especially in the back row, and a really cool twisted spiral drop. Number 4 is the classic Magnum XL 200. Every time I go to Cedar Point, I like this coaster more and more and more. This coaster is an airtime machine, especially during the second half of the ride where it's back to back to back to back to back ejector triangular airtime hills, with several of them being through tunnels. This is a very fun coaster as it goes past the water park, and you also get some really nice views of Lake Erie as well. A very fun coaster. Despite its bumpiness, this is still a must ride at Cedar Point, and my 4th favorite at the park. But not quite in the top 3, because number 3 is Maverick, and this coaster just hauls through the course. This coaster has excellent pacing. You are flying through. You have that insane beyond vertical drop with the crazy ejector airtime, especially in the back row, along with 2 inversions, 2 ejector airtime hills, a crazy 70 mile per hour launch, along with several very tight turns. This is an excellent coaster at Cedar Point, but not quite in my top 2. Second place is a coaster right next to it that's double the size. It's Steel Vengeance. This is an insane RMC hyper hybrid. It has the craziest airtime in the park by far, and it has more airtime than any other coaster that I've ridden, and my 4th favorite coaster ever overall. This coaster has a phenomenal first drop, insane big airtime hills, very crazy small airtime hills, and plenty of inversions. This coaster has literally everything you want out of a coaster, but my one minor drawback is those final little ejector airtime hills. Though they are really fun, they do crush your thighs a bit. And number 1 is Millenium Force, the slight edge over Steel Vengeance, because I don't get hurt on this ride, ever. And this coaster, 21 years of operation, still holds up and runs so smooth. The drop is fantastic. The 2 big floater airtime hills are excellent, provide some great airtime. The smaller ejector hill has great airtime, and the bank turns and all the other turns in general are excellent on this coaster. And it's just a very fun, fast, wild adventure through the trees, and at one point dinosaurs alive before it was removed. Millenium Force is my 3rd favorite coaster I've ridden, and my favorite coaster at Cedar Point. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, stay tuned for more videos.